All right, so let's stick it with Oscars just a little bit more now. I'm going to talk about two of its nominated films. Well, I should say this year's nominated films, right? Two that I really had the pleasure of seeing, right? So these are going up for best documentary feature, right? So because The Homie, which was my pick for favorite documentary of last year, or The Homie, yeah, didn't get nominated. Didn't get nominated this year. Yeah, it went to five other titles, right? One of which in particular, I was curious about just the moment I saw the title, and I finally got the chance to see it. So I'll start off with that. So this one is called Soundtrack to Coup d'etat, right? So what it's about, right? So this is kind of a tough film to talk about, right? Because what it does, right? So it centers on all the events that led to the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, right?
Right.
Back in like the early 60s, right?
Right.
But what the show does, it just goes back into, just the early stages of how that assassination took place, right? When the Cold War was in effect, and, there's just all these tensions between the States and Russia at the time and all that kind of stuff, right? But it also touches on, the Congo, right? And, the Belgians, pretty much maintaining this stronghold there. But then they had, Congo actually had like their official independence from Belgium in the early 60s, right? And right after that, though, even though they were still independent, there was a war that took place, right? Because these Belgian soldiers went in and it was just a lot of drama that went down.
No, yeah, that whole situation is a complete mess. Like
yes,
it gets messier and messier and messier, and you can get into a whole like back and forth about the relationship between Belgium particularly bad, but France, right?
Yes,
France effectively still colonizing a whole chunk of Africa, and they still play a lot of like shenanigans with respect to French culture and money, and a whole chunk of Africa still have the franc and still referencing the euro as a thing from when it comes to money. It's all of that, right? But yeah, Patrice Lumumba is one of these guys. By the way, the only reason I know who Patrice Lumumba was, the first time I learned his name is on Nas album, right?
Oh, okay. I thought I was gonna talk about the oh gosh, remember HBO had this feature, this movie called Lumumba. It was about him. I forgot who played him.
I remember that.
Yeah, I didn't watch it though, but that was the first time I heard of him. Not through Nas, weirdly enough, right? But yeah.
No, it's true not. Like that's how I know who it is. Like to Patrice Lumumba in my story, I think it's the end of Stelmatic. You mentioned it when they track. Like, oh shit, I don't know who that is. Like I'm too young. And I look him up and like, oh okay.
Yeah.
But it is a mess. Like it's a whole thing, and then they follow up of who they put in as a puppet government person. It's a whole thing.
Yes.
But yeah, that's a reason why, and people are not talking about this. Is one of the things you're not talking about. Black people. But yeah, it from Congo, it has effectively something called, you could kind of call it a World War III in terms of the size and scale of but they just call it the African World War, the two African World Wars. But yeah, in terms of size and scale and numbers, yeah, it's about the same amount of people as World War II die out. Is that right? These massive wars that just play out in the last 20, 25 years. And nobody's just talking about it because now Americans part of it. So is that. But yeah, all of that fallout is come from the Congo. The Congo just never sorted itself out. If for whatever reason. And again, most of it is because of colonialism and new colonialism. But is that so I wanted to see this. I didn't get any time to watch it, but yeah, because it's one of those things you're kind of preaching to the choir for it, so I don't have to you're not teaching me anything. But like, if it's good, fine.
All right. Well, I'll put like this, right? So, I just know just little information as to what went down. I probably heard about these things like through like a documentary or some piece of article, or something that I read over the years, right? But I don't know the full details, right? But what this show does, it just covers just basically put things on a timeline and just cover like all the events that led to it, right? We see how the CIA was involved, right? We see how the United Nations was involved, right? A lot of the show is built around the formation of not so much the formation of the United Nations, but how they actually got involved in more or less pacifying, wars and bringing about independence in, colonized nations and stuff like that, right? They touch on those things, right? But there's a key element to this, right? And this is what roped me in from the very start, right? But I wasn't sure where it was going. But throughout the show, they was kind of leading you in, just kind of telling you, wait, just keep your eye on this, keep your eye on this, right? Because there's a lot that goes on with the show, right? But keep your eye on this particular element, right? But then when it comes around full circle at the very end, I was like, okay, now I understand. Where this is why it's called soundtrack, right? Because it also touch on American jazz. It's in particular
Right.
certain jazz musicians. Because I didn't know this, right? But certain jazz musicians, right, like Max Roach, Duke Ellington,
Right.
the heavy hitters now, oh gosh, Louis Armstrong, people like that now, even Miles Davis, right, legendary OG, right, they got roped in. Can you remember that? Because the show reminds you of this, right?
No, right. So I kind of familiar with this with respect to like the history of like counterculture and CIA stuff, right? So this is not a secret. This is like open kind of stuff where what we call like modern art or contemporary art is actually a product of the CIA. Like it's a stereotype, right? Like, oh well, Pris Christ or something like that is some stereotype of liberals, but no, it's actually a product of like American intelligence, deliberate subversion of the of like Stalinist Russia, especially because Stalinist Russia and that type style of communism was very into classical art. You like modern pop culture frame it as the opposite. Well, no, classical art is really Western values and blah blah blah. No, not true. Like most modern stuff, like jazz has been whooped into that. Like I don't think Duke Ellington is like a CIA agent or anything like that. Same thing with like a lot of modern feminism as well. Like these kind of subversive things are CIA operative things. It's ops, right? They're not necessarily bad things, but they're clearly ops. Like I get that. I'm very aware of that history. Yeah, go ahead now. Sorry.
No, well, that's great point. So, and
Yeah,
early on, they touch on how the premier at Stalin, I forgot his name right now, Nikita something. Yeah, he didn't like
Khrushchev.
jazz from the jump, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
he was just
Khrushchev.
like,
Yeah.
oh, jazz is just, is this a cacophony of noise and all that kind of stuff, right?
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah, into that. Yeah,
And that
yeah.
was funny.
There's a whole weird debate about this because like jazz was hated from more or less the beginning. Like jazz is meant to be like a kind of anti-classical music, right? Like that's what jazz is. Like it's if well, for one, to like jazz, you have to know classical properly, like as a musical genre. But in terms of the cultural conceit of it, yeah, it was hated since the Nazis. Like that was a whole thing. Like jazz was super popular in Germany for a while before the Nazis came to power, and then it ended up becoming this thing, but it also was a weapon by the United States. I want to say weaponized. I want to say weaponized, but that's kind of overstating it. But yeah, a lot of like what do you call him? Yeah, Nikita Khrushchev, right? A lot of Russia didn't like it because it was one of those things to throw off how the world works, and it is good weaponry. And that's the same reason why you play rock and roll, in some Vietnam or war torn country or wherever it is, or
Yeah.
Panama or something like that. It's the same. What always call that boy I forget the technique, but it's misinformation. It's that same thing. It if you put it in the right place, you could weaponize it. Even though yes, I think jazz is a ultimately positive force or good or whatever it is. But yeah, the CIA was up to chicanery, and yeah, again, I don't think Miles Davis is a CIA agent or anything like that. Or you can find that they pay, but they give money now. And they get money and these kind of things. But Louis Armstrong, I think in particular, you can find that picture of him in Egypt when he went to
Yeah,
Egypt.
and the show that, yeah, when
Yeah,
when
yeah,
he and
yeah,
his
yeah, yeah.
band
He and
went
his
there,
wife.
yeah.
But he and his wife is that famous picture of him and his wife in Egypt. But yeah, it was popular stuff, and it's an interesting kind of space of how to put culture and thing. And you could get into that back and forth about hip hop, like where hip hop is and why, and how hip hop is really of the streets. But then the music industry could get into there and do other things to undermine this other person and so on and so forth. When you think about hip hop and the streets. And you say, oh well, like right now we have a whole back and forth with respect to like, all right, it's a Palestinian hip hop, and like it have a guy who's effectively the Kendrick Lamar of Palestine, like that back and forth of how
Oh, I
him
want to
being,
hear that.
yeah, how him being subversive because again the nature of their relationship and whatnot. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. As I said, well, I'll get into this. This is a different argument because I didn't make the effort to see this movie because I didn't think it would be new to me. But I'll wait. So whatever. Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Right. But and fun fact, Louis also went to the Congo. He performed in front
Right,
of Lumumba, but that was like before they achieved independence and stuff like that, right?
right.
But yeah, the show also touches on these jazz musicians, right? And I forgot even OG herself, Nina Simone.
Right?
She was hired to go to perform at this thing, but it was a CIA front, and she didn't even know that till after
Yeah.
the fact. They made
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
clear.
I was saying,
Yeah,
a lot of them they were just kind of used in a sense now. Kind of, because it's like, whatever. You had to look for your money and you don't know now. But to be fair, money could come from somewhere and you ain't know until it's too late now because you're just thinking, you ain't keeping up with your own finances. Like recently on the right wing, this was a big, like, hubbub where a bunch of, like, famous, like, right wing, like, podcast types got money from people they didn't know because they didn't check, and to find out that they end up becoming tools of another, like, up now. In their own way now. All of them had to just kind of just, like, disappear. Like after that now, it's like, oh wow, they, even though they're cynical people, they're not cynical. They catch them now. It was real dread. Yeah, what?
right. Yeah. So that's a jump into the show itself, right? So for me, I'll confess this, right? I actually attempted to watch this film before, right? And I was supposed to talk about it in a previous episode, right? But I only got through it half of it, right? Because Ship and me decided to watch this thing on a Friday night, right? And I'll tell you, don't watch a show on a Friday night, right? Especially when you just looking to keep your eyes open and just keep busy there, because of Friday night, right?
Right.
This show clocks in at 2.5 hours, right? And this is one of those shows where you are required to pay attention to
Yeah.
everything that goes on, right?
Yeah.
Now, this is not a gripe, right? But this is just something that, unless you just know a lot about world history, right? I guess if you know a lot more about world history than I do, I guess it would be much easier for you, right? Easier for you, right? But there's a lot of info being thrown at you, right? And some of these things might just you might understand it in terms of just the timeline, right? In terms of how things are growing, right? But there's other things that will just kind of slip past you, right? It's not that it's not presented in a clear way. It's just there's a lot of information being thrown at you, right? So some things you will not get, but that's not to say that the show is just unintelligible at certain points. It's not like that. It's just there's a lot going on, right? And one thing I really admire about this show, right? Because I'll put this, right? This is probably this is an epic documentary, Jen. I have never seen a documentary of this magnitude that was not a mini series, that was not put out from who's the guy? Ken Burns, who is do like
Right,
these
right, right, right,
these 4-part or 5-part documentaries
right.
about what the Civil War,
This
whatever.
this
It's
this
not like
this
that,
would have
right?
made Yeah, this would have made my list of stuff I should have seen last year, kind of thing, and I just kind of
Mm,
forget. Like,
yeah.
quite,
I
this
wish I
was,
saw it last year too, to be
you
honest.
know,
Yeah.
this was in the circulation really early for me, and I just like, well, I'm not gonna learn anything new from it, even though yes, it is a very important issue. But I think I put it on a more low burn because I don't think I would have learned anything new from it. And it's a documentary, so it had to do something in that way, So it's that. I don't know.
Yeah, I
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
understand. Yeah, and yeah, but this is a show that you had to sit down with, you had to take in everything. What I was doing, like every time they would reach a certain point, I would like probably take a little break, step away, get some something to drink or something, then come back and watch it, right? Because I wanted to be attentive for every single thing, right? Because I knew there was a punchline that was covered. I'll get to that in a bit, right? But yeah, I I really in awe of how this show is just able to take so much information and condense it in 2.5 hours, right? So mad points for the filmmakers behind the scenes, right? Also, something that they do very well, right? It's a common technique, right, in terms of documentary filmmaking, right? But it really works brilliantly here, right? Just basically it there's literally little to no narration, right? When there is
Right.
narration, it's from like actual memoirs from certain people who were involved in what would eventually be Lumumba's assassination, right? There's his personal aide, I forgot her name right now. Her memoir is read out by this person. And then there's another, well, this guy, this author, he lived in Congo around the time when the war started, right? He was a kid at the time, right? So he was just talking about, well, when the war started and how eventually when he talk about how Congo just became this hub for all these minerals. So it feels like uranium. That's just basically stuff involved in wars, right? So whether it's like copper for bullets or uranium for the atom bomb or whatever it is, right? But he's more talking about it
Yeah,
like,
like
oh, it came
most
from my
African
home,
uranium.
Dread. It came from, yeah, it
Yeah,
came from my home.
most African. I think most African uranium this come from is one Congo, but two is go to France's nuclear arsenal and nuclear. power
Yes.
plants. I think a lot of
And it
France's
touch
power,
on
like
that too. Like it
yeah,
goes to France and
right,
well, and to the States and to Russia as well too. And it was all about, oh well, is the whole circumstance behind the Cold War. It's like, oh, I don't want you to, or you wanna attack me. All right, well, I wanna get my arms ready, Dred. And then
right,
you
yeah.
have the United Nations coming and saying, no, 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 you don't need to do that, Dred. No, peace
Yeah,
and love, man. But
in
then
the
you
case
see
of
how insidious that was too, because yeah, they had ulterior motives too, which catch me by surprise too, right? Yeah, the United
right,
Nations, like look at that, right? Yeah,
in the case of France, because France have a lot of nuclear power plants, it's just power in France. Like that's the way it is. It's just that. Like a lot of it is simply that.
right.
Uh,
Mm,
like I don't think like France have a reasonably okay nuclear stockade, but it's not like super big or anything like that. Like yeah, I don't think that's where the uranium going. But again, it's still insidious nonsense. So yeah,
yeah. All right, so a few things for you before wrap up, right? They also use these quotes, right? And how they do it was just it's simple but so effective, right? They will just quote a certain person who is involved at the time, like it's just some comment that they say or some slander or some comment about what some person say or do whatever, and that kind of sets up what each scene is gonna be about, right? And you just see it like just these archival scenes of archival footage involving, just discussions in the United Nations or just speeches or whatnot by Lumumba and other people as well, and it just lays everything down, right? But the secret sauce to all this shred is the music, because they use the songs from those jazz musicians that I mentioned before and others, right? And that is the timeline, right? But it also sets up just thematically what you're gonna get, right? So if it's something kind of hard to discern, you will get like modal jazz, right? Or if it's something kind of
right,
spontaneous or something that's gonna lead to something very bleak and dark and very disparaging, you will use some kind of like they'll find like a jazz song, right? It's not just
right,
instrumental but vocal as well too, because you hear a few Nina Simone songs as well, right? And it just fit it just somehow managed to fit everything that you see here, right? So I would say, right, as far as just like rhythmic editing, this is some of the best that
right,
I've seen in years, right?
right,
And I
right.
would say if you want to learn about rhythmic editing, watch this film.
Yeah,
You'll learn that, right?
nice.
Also too, I would say just in terms of learning, right? This is like the perfect show for film schools, really. You just run this and then afterwards just have like this, oh, what does this show do well in terms of editing or with music or with narrative, right? And just do like a long essay about that. This is like the perfect show to screen in film schools, and then you just pull out essay questions and give your students that to do, right? Because there's just so much technically that you can learn from it, right? Especially if you want to learn about documentary filmmaking and the styles of it and whatnot, right? So even if, like for me, I didn't come out of it knowing every single specific detail, I got the gist of what was going on. I saw what the show was trying to say, because yes, with every big development that takes place, and oh, this country is free and all that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
There's always like a flip side to this. Always something dark and insidious is going on, right? And yeah, just how this show maps it all out, right? To the point that you now realize, and this is what the show kind of subtly hints at, right? Yeah, I kind of come out of it thinking, maybe the states had something to do with Lumumba's assassination as well, right?
More than
Could be,
likely,
could be,
yes.
could be,
More
right?
than likely,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
It's
The
not even
show
like
suddenly says that, right?
because every time,
I walked
every
out
time
of
you
it
see
show like, wow, boy, like you serious?
no, every time you see some weird bullshit went dog, and then 50 years later, it's like, yeah, we do that shit. Like it was the CIA just admitted like later. It's like there's a running joke about that now, like right wing conspiracy theories, most crazy bullshit about the moon or something like that. Left wing
Yeah.
conspiracy theories. Yeah, we did that shit like 30 years before you thought we did it. Like
You
it's
know,
not joke.
cause,
But no,
like in
yeah,
the
it's
like in the third act, them literally started. They was planning out, like you see the assassination being planned out, right? Like a man, like a certain someone would say, yeah, like this man, this Lumumba guy getting too big, oh, he want to be involved in the United Nations, and oh,
oh no,
we
yeah,
don't want to
yeah.
have a lot of African nations here, no, but why he want to come? No, this man's our problem. We need to get rid of
No,
him, Dread.
a
It's
lot of,
like
a
that.
lot of,
It's real
yeah,
Dread.
a lot of, yeah. Like to the Americans, the Cold War was pretty zero sum. So even people who wasn't like no big time communists or anything like that, the mere fact it wasn't even just siding with America was a problem, right? It's just yeah, it was for us or against us in that thing. Like, yeah, look up Thomas Sankara, right? We know who that is, right? Same thing, similar kind of situation where it's like you have to wait this when it comes to like just decolonialization, it happening way too fast. They carry cover, especially France. Like like America would be fine. America was fine, but like France was really in a bad space because not only they had to capitulate to the Nazis and effectively surrender, they lost a lot in the material scenario. So they just had to just straight up just like bleed like somewhere dry, and they effectively did that. Like if like right now France is one of those countries that if Africa like somehow cut off France, France will go into the total dustbin of history. Like they the entire present is African. Like so that's why like when that fella make a joke, they get mad about it about the World Cup now. Like the France winning the World Cup is basically Africa winning the World Cup. Like I forget the what do you call him fella from South Africa.
Not Trevor Noah.
Trevor Noah, thank you. Right. Yeah,
Oh, okay. I actually not surprised you because joke.
yeah,
like
when he made that joke and people get so mad over it, it's like, yeah, because he hit a nerve there. It's like, yeah, I'm sorry to say it. Like, and that debate about like if something is French or not and what French means and if something, a lot of French people, or at least French people on that side of the argument, will say, no, there's no such thing as French colonialism. It's just French nation state and the nationalism of it. Like, you can get into that part. But sorry, the actual numbers is play out where, yeah, just they don't want French immigration and they don't want people to like make money as it is now. Like if it was black people making plenty of money and it was fine, it would have been fine. But that's not what's happening. Like it's like way too much suffering and way too much poverty, in the conceit now. But we could find out why that is or how. At the end of the day is as like it's gonna become a problem for them, especially with China and their presence in Africa. Like that's a whole can of worms right there, right? But there are a lot of people who gonna just kind of make that hard choice because they know, they're gonna go with the devil that they don't know, right? They don't think that China gonna be that bad, and that's gonna be a big whole argument about where the resources gonna go. Cause it does boil down to the money at the end of the day. Like it everything else is bullshit. Representation and who this and black people in some movie or some nonsense like that. People in a no bag, people had to get a bag. Like it does boil down to that.
Yeah.
It have plenty of black people who could just be like, all right, well, enough of this. Like, we tired of this. We don't care about this. Just they're gonna start to secure stuff in a hard sense, and it's outright cut off, European countries, just straight up cut off, and the European countries gonna start to need them in a hard sense now. Like just think about something like Swiss chocolate, simple bullshit thing. It had no cocoa trees growing in Switzerland. Come on, like where the cocoa coming from? Where the cocoa coming from? Come on, like it's little simple things like that, right? Little things like that. Why it's called? And you could just which one easier? Take the techniques or take the resources? It's easier to take the techniques. The techniques transferable, right? And because that's what China did. China just straight up just bringing people, take the techniques and then kick them out and build it for themselves, right? They just straight up do that. Like you doing the thing. You steal from people with this, and they steal from you. Like, it have a piece of. There's a slight tangent. I'll shut up after this. But like, China created an AI that better than OpenAI, and they make their own AI. And what they do is just copy OpenAI and then make it more open than OpenAI. Because OpenAI kind of the people who run in the country kind of dancing around with the source code and whatever it is. No, China is straight up steal the source code and make their own shit. I'm like, wow, that kind of fucking dread, dude. Like that. But and then they just give it. They just give it to everybody, and it's actually like more accessible. Like, and it's a kind of open AI killer. But like again, this news moving so fast that you don't know how it's gonna play out and where the Americans go and go with it now. But I don't know. It's interesting stuff. Like it's not. Cause I don't hardly have a side. Like I'm from Trinidad. Look, we from the land of Kwame Ture, right? Kwame Ture called it like decades ago, right? He called it decades ago. We know the deal in this country, but like we kind of passed through both sides of the argument, and it's like, all right, well. You had to make your money, but you had to cater this, and it's just who doing what and why. And the only issue is that my attitude is that, and there's a kind of the slight silver lining with say the last election is that if they're serious about what they're saying, they're gonna have to just get out of other people's business. Like that's the main problem I have with the United States is just and these European countries. Just get out of other people's business. We don't need you. Right? You're not as important as you think you are, and I think you should go back and cater to your house. Right? You have way too many military bases all over the place and these kind of things. This is not coming from some big lefty person saying this, Like you don't have to be no big lefty or some big progressive to say this. This is just where the money is and what kind of money you're spending. You have way too much fucking money spending on the military. Full stop. That's it. And you're wasting time, you're wasting resources on nonsense now. And France is like the worst of the worst, like when it comes to this history now. So yeah, Patrice Lumumba is such an interesting like focal point for a lot of this now because he was like the perfect example of you operating in bad faith because he was such a he was doing everything right and they still kill him. Like is that now? You're like, oh well, he just kind of make out all like for what it is.
Yeah, which he did actually. Well,
look up Thomas Sankara, like even more tragic story, right? He's another person like that, right? Same thing. But yeah, we will see. Time will
Yeah.
tell.
So that's last point, right? But at times, I was just there like, oh gosh, well, the music cool, is great, and it's OGs and stuff like that, right? But I thought it was just there, like, just to lighten the mood or just to, well, heighten the mood, if you will, right? But because they would occasionally zero in on the musicians themselves, right? And all right, so I'll put it like this, right? So they, even though they're just making music, right? It was they weren't they didn't they this kind of eventually became political tools for the government, right? For the U.S. government, right? But to them it was just like, well, here's what, I'm a black man, in the mid 50s or whatever it is, right? Like, look, I have a chance to take my music to the world, so let me go with it, right? And I could touch lives, just express myself, right? Yes, there were tools, right? They were just there to go to certain places. It's like, oh, we're going on this tour, right? But you could tell, oh, it had people behind the scenes who just kind of taking note, oh, this is what
Oh yeah,
this government up to. All right,
no,
cool, all
yeah,
right.
no
We
stuff.
could drum them out just now.
Yeah,
That's
no
what they were
stuff.
there for.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
stuff like that doesn't operate the way you think it is. Like, and yes, they will get the direct goal of say murdering this, this person who was in charge or this elected leader. Like, like the closest thing we have is Grenada, right? Like that guy, he was like a really charismatic leader, and you just straight up taken out because they think communism is so evil or whatever it is, right? But it's you're as I say, judged by enemies now. What are you doing? Not making it look good now, as as America now, as a country. And yeah, he's one of those guys who just like he did everything right. Like, sorry, you can't say that. At what point I look at Patrice Lumumba as a evil figure, terrible. Nope. And who they replace him with is like with his Mobutu, terrible.
Yeah,
Like one of
yeah,
the
yeah,
worst.
and they show just how insidious he
Yeah,
was.
yeah, one of
Yeah,
the worst African dictators probably ever. Like easily top three or whatever it is, right? Is that kind of thing, right?
and dude,
Is
there's
that
there's a moment where he in the United Nations doing a speech, boy. That man was so fully self trip, boy. I
yeah,
just
yeah,
watch you like, dog. And it's just before Lumumba even get killed. It's like, boy, you's a problem,
right,
right? But
yeah,
but the beauty of the show too is not just okay. We have jazz for the sake of jazz, right? One focal point, one character in this story, this wide story, right, is Malcolm X, right?
right,
And you could tell that through, because he's observing, he's taking note of what's going on in those countries and whatnot, and he taking note, he talking about them in his speeches and whatnot, right? So he's educating his people on what's going on, right? So you could tell these jazz musicians who are observing what's going on with the civil rights movement and all that kind of stuff, right? They are subconsciously learning about the world around them, right? And understanding the plight of the black man even more. It goes beyond the states, right? So you could tell, like, there's a moment where Louis Armstrong found out something, right? And he was like, nah, I'm not going on no tour not with all no more, Dre. Like
right,
I
right.
backing out, Dre. Like I can't be doing this. No, well, it's because of what went on in the States as well, too, right? Like I can't be supporting my own country and this is what they're doing. Come on, I out it, right? Around the height of the civil rights movement. Yeah, Louis Armstrong was like, nah, I'm not supporting all yeah, I'm not gonna be all the ambassador no more. And even at a point in time where Dizzy Gillespie see he running for president as well too, and people thought it was
Right,
just he was just on kicks, right? But like no, the man was actually serious. He was actually serious about it, right? So that's why I love how the framing of jazz now, as even with how it was perceived that in the past, right? But that's the idea of it being just expressionism, black
yeah,
expressionism, right? Yeah, just how they felt as just being African Americans at the time, and how that transcended, to into music as well. It works,
right,
right? But how this film frames it as well too, and it comes down to the very end of the show that I'm not gonna spoil, right? But I'll just say it takes a early moment, like that's the beginning of the film, and you just they watch it like, all right, you just set up the tone of the film. Okay, cool, no problem. But it comes back full circle, Dread, and it is one of the biggest gut punches. I would say that's like the harshest gut punch that movie had, but it just save it for last, Dread. But it building it while you're watching the show, you just taking it, you're just watching the story play out, right? And then when you just drop that bomb on you, but it's like, all right, understand why jazz was used in the first place, because
correct,
even though it's not a major part of what went on with Lumumba's assassination, it's just again the plight of the black man, Dred, and it goes beyond the states, it goes beyond jazz, like it's bigger than that, it's much bigger than that, and just Lumoma's murder dread, that's kind of embodied that dread, and you just see just the repercussions of that in that one particular moment. That's all I see without spoiling anything, right? So yeah, this was kind of brilliant, dread. This was an
Right, nice.
excellent documentary. This is one that if ever I decide to get into documentary filmmaking or video
Right,
essays, wink wink, I will watch this. Well, I'll be like, all right, this is how you frame it. This is how you build things thematically, narratively, stylistically. You know what I mean? It just nails everything. Just excellently in my opinion, right? But I will say before I get to rating, right? This is a show that you had to sit with, right? You had to sit with it. You had
right,
to take in everything, right? And not everything you will fully comprehend from first viewing, right? There's a lot of politics involved. There's a lot of world history and facts being thrown at you, right? And at
right,
times it could
right,
feel very overwhelming, right? This is a very it's sprawling. That's another term I'll use to describe this, right? But not in a bad way, right?
right,
But I felt that the people behind the scenes might just did this. It's a very ambitious film, right? But I thought that they nailed it. They managed to condense everything and make sense of it out of it, make everything flow. Because yes, this is a very, very complex story, right? Because it's not just a guy got killed. It's all the steps that were taken, all the decisions that were made, all the changes that were made around the world, and what led to it, right? And the show literally tells you step by step by step by step what happens, right? But it also uses jazz and how jazz became influential and how it's able to hit certain areas of the globe and whatnot, right? And you see, yeah, just something that shocked me, right? Yeah, just how it's bigger than this them being ambassadors and just not just about United States, but also this musical art form. It's like no, it was just far away for people to just take note of what going on in certain countries and say, all right, well, when the time comes, when people get big and they get too big for the britches, all right, we take them out, and we could just hire some people, do it, make it real quiet and whatnot. Then after the fact, 50 years from now, somebody do a random interview, and you see a couple of interviews there, and they just come and say, yeah, I was hired, I do it, I didn't really
yeah,
care,
yeah.
it's for the
Like
money.
this
It's like
this this
whatever.
movie, this movie, yeah. Like and years later, there's be casual about it. Like what's this movie? The movie with in Jakarta, I think. Shit, what's the name of that movie again? By I want to say
What movie
Jakarta.
was that? What show was
Oh,
that?
that's real popular documentary. Oh, shit, what's the name of that movie? By
Oh gosh, oh gosh, oh gosh, oh gosh.
I want to say Jakarta, but we getting it wrong.
It was these guys, and it was like this kill squad. This
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah,
They,
they
they
used
were
they used to
they
kill a bunch of
basically
people.
it was basically the act of killing. The act
The
of
act of
killing.
killing, boy, that
Right,
was a rough
right.
watch,
And
man.
them men
I'll,
were
I'll
just
touch on a
casual
rough
with that
watch
shit.
in a minute. I'll
Yeah.
I'll get to some similarly grim and brutal dread coming
Right.
up next, right? But yeah, go on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that is that. Like it's like that. Like people do their thing years ago, and it's like yeah, they don't really feel sorry for it or anything like that. They're just casual about it. And I see the whole thing is that the banality of the whole thing that's make it so insidious now. Like it's that it's not like they're necessarily ideologues, but they're just good at a job. It's just a job, and they're good at their job, and they'll do it really well. And it just so happen to be the most insidious bullshit ever. But very few people are actual ideologues. That's what make it a problem now. You just lock into the system of work now. And that's how I feel that a lot of the stuff is now. It's like, oh, in the end of the day, it just boils down to money. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
again, very few people are ideologues, but, it boils down to money now. Like, it's just that. Like, you said, oh, well, my money going to dry up if I don't do this. Full stop. Like, that's it. That's
Yeah,
it. I
yeah,
know one way or the other. If you can make it work without that, then cool. But you got to figure out a way now. And they'll just do or say anything to get through. And they really care. Like, what is it? Moving on. That's it.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
go ahead.
So for me, strong 4.5 out of 5, man.
Okay, nice one. Okay.
This is one of the best documentaries that of 2024 that I actually see in 2025. Right, that's the best way I could sum it up. This easily would have made it to my best stuff. I still prefer the homie over this though because I felt like the
Okay,
homie and the
right.
topics that they touch on just hit me
Yeah, we
deeper.
done another documentary we kind of forget about is Superman.
Oh
I thought that would have
yeah.
get something. I thought that would get something. I didn't. Yeah, I didn't think
It,
it would
it,
win,
it
but I
it
thought it would
could
get
have.
nominated.
It could have gotten
Yeah,
nominated. I don't even think it
I
was
thought it would get
shortlisted
nominated.
though.
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't know if it's a DC thing. I don't know, but
And probably because
they could have still
it's
submitted.
so right. Because I thought it was so like it very in house, like DC wise now. Because it's really catering to DC and the material, and it's kind of a puff piece, but like it makes sense because he's like the one person you should puff piece. He can't see live up to the puff piece now, so it's that now. But yeah, that's why I feel it didn't get nominated, probably because of that. But still feel they should have make an effort. Whatever, moving on.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, this is one of the best documentaries I've seen in a long while, though. And it's not just the thematic aspect of it, it's the technical aspect of it, right? How they use music, how they use it thematically, how
Right.
they use it
Right.
rhythmically, and with the editing and stuff like that, right? And just how they took all this information, right? Just a lot of detail, a lot of research went into this, right? And put it down and make sense of it all, right? 'Cause again, it's very, very complex. There's years and years and years of stuff that went down before that man even got killed, right? And just how they just sort of bring things full circle at the very end, though, totally work for me, right? So yes, the title is very, very appropriate, right? So yeah, I strongly recommend this one, but again, this is one that you had to sit down with. Like if you have like a 3 hours, because I would say I don't think that you will be able to take in all this with uninterrupted. Like I just pause like every so often just to get some water or just to stretch my legs or whatnot. Then I'll get back to it though, because again, there's just a lot of information being thrown at you, right? But yeah, just in terms of ambition, in terms of scope, in terms of just the message of it, yeah, one of the best I've seen in a long while. Definitely check this out. And speaking about grim and rough documentaries now, let me touch on a film that I'm calling this right now, I think could win for best documentary feature.
Okay, nice one.
No Other Land, right? This
Right.
is a Palestinian documentary, right? And
Okay, right. Yeah,
yeah,
that's right. So
yeah,
yeah, that freshened everybody memory.
yep,
I was
yep,
saying,
yep, yep.
because for me it was in terms of documentary picks, it was this. I didn't see this, but I was thinking, given the subject matter, yeah, and then this, although it could go both ways, right? It because the subject matter people reject it, or because the subject matter people accept it, but it freshened people's mind, so it could work one way or the other.
Yeah.
But this, or either this or Sugarcane, which is
Oh,
also a very like.
Sugar Cane is one I need to see. I'll
So
probably check it out for
I saw that
for the show.
very, very early last year, but I didn't think it was like great or worth talking about. But like, given the
All right.
subject matter, like, all right, I could see it getting through, and I see it ultimately get through. I'm like, all right, okay,
Yeah,
um,
and
yeah,
McGill, Lily Gladstone executive produced
right,
that, so I want
right.
to see that.
That is
Right,
why
right.
I kept up. I was aware of it because of her, and because of that subject matter, and that is like some of the most like really grim shit. Like if you want to talk about
So if we,
grim,
yeah,
that is like the grimace, like no grimace, say no McDonald's purple man, right? Just grim. Is that
yeah,
and yeah. So, but it's this and that I had my two best stick, but not this, not the
right,
one you just talked about, not
right.
something
Now,
else. Put it up, yeah.
no. To be fair, right, with soundtrack, right. Now, technically, like execution wise, right, in terms of how it presents its material and whatnot, it could win. It could win, right?
Right,
Just from
right,
sheer technicality, right?
right.
But in terms of just current subject matter, boy, I really
Right,
think it'll be No Other Land, right? Because while I was watching this remind me of one that I saw as the moment it was announced as being nominated, right? And then I saw it, even though it came out the year before, and I said this one was gonna win best documentary feature, and it did. 20 Days in Mariupol. This have a
right.
similar feel
Same
to it,
vibe,
right?
right? Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Right? Really grim, dark material, but it's very, very current with what's going on, right? So what it's about, right? So it covers about 5 years or so, right? So what happens, right? We introduced to this activist, right, named Basil, right? He's Palestinian, right? His dad was in his dad and to an extent his mom, right? They were involved in this activism for years, right? And what they would do ever since that he was a kid, they would document these things. They would film, their protests and all that kind of stuff, right? And they will, of course, film, the times, because he lives like in the mountains now, right? So it's like this farming area, but it's way up in the mountains and whatnot, right? So they'll film the times together and all that kind of stuff, right? So he's familiar with the camera as well, right? So what he considers, right? It centers on these Israeli soldiers, right? Who, all right, I should say this. I went into this as blind as possible, right? So forgive me, folks, if I didn't know that all this was happening, right? But yeah, boy, there were these Israeli soldiers, right, who just show up in it's this particular area. I forgot the name of it, right? But it's where all these different villages are, right? I just basically run everybody out of the homes and say, here's what. All you can stay here. We demolishing all your homes. And the
Right,
reason being is because, yeah, basically this firing zone, right? It's for us to do that, right? So because it's up in the mountains and we don't want people to be, perturbed when they hear bullets firing and all that kind of stuff, yeah, all they gotta go. And
Right.
it's years of this going on, right? Because people are being chased out. And while they're being chased out, they will come back now and they will like rebuild their homes or whatnot. There's even a truly, truly heartbreaking moment where you find out that a school was rebuilt, right? Like over the course of like a good period of time, right? But it's like the women were working it on during the day and the men were doing it at night, right? And they still kind of come down and demolish the school. It's like that, Dread, right? So Basil now, being one of the members of that community, of that area, yeah, he was filming all that kind of stuff, right? Because he would take his camera, he would if he have a phone with him, he'll take his phone and he would just go there and be like, look at what you guys are doing, we're filming this, right? He would host
Right.
like a little protest or whatnot, right? But what he sure really set us all right, there's this Israeli journalist, right, by the name of Yuval, right? And he is aware of what's going on too. So he shows up and he forms this friendship with Basil, right? And together they pretty much just document all these atrocities, right? And you see later on that they would be interviewed by various news programs across the globe, actually, not so much in not just in Israel but also like from England and states and whatnot. And they're just touching on what's going on there, right? But the show, in addition to just showing how they work together and how they just film all this kind of stuff, the show also and just shows a lot of just how bad the situation is, right? Because it's a lot of families being driven out of their homes, mostly at gunpoint. It's
Right.
boy, it's to the point that families had to go in caves huts and live there, right? I just they're like, but it's a cave though, like what? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They had to get like a generator just to power up cause they had like they set up a TV there so you can watch news and stuff like this. They're like, but why though? You know what I mean? And they're like, all right, like this fundamentally don't make no sense though. But the show touches on it, right? But I'll get to it near the end, right? But yeah, it's just from this, from what we know of with the whole Israel Hamas thing going on right now.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
just that rivalry, just that decades long rivalry between Israel and Palestine, right? Yeah, that led to this, right? And it's just so heartbreaking to watch, right? But just to jump into the review here, right? What makes it work though is just really what it all boils down to is just showing you the truth. Just listen, I have a camera. I could get shot doing this, right? But the world needs to know the truth, right? So I am
Right.
going to
Right. Right.
go
Right.
there. I'm gonna film this. I'm gonna film my neighbors, right, being chased out. It's not for popularity. I'm not just doing this for clicks or whatnot. I'm doing this because the world had to know that this is going on, right? As the bravery that Basil has in doing this, right? But for a guy like the journalist, right, who who is sickened by what his people is doing, right? But he go in the thick of it as well too and saying, look, I had to document this too. And look, I found somebody like-minded who want to tell the truth as well, right? So
Right.
in other words, the camera is their weapon, and what you literally see them use this weapon very effectively, right? Okay, yeah, they're going up against people with guns, right? And there's a point where a certain person, a certain individual is shot at, and then you see what happened to him, and that is like beyond heartbreaking to me. But I won't spoil that. But it's just the bravery of it all, though. And I should mention too, they are the co-directors of this movie, right? There's two other
Right.
people that helped them out throughout that 5-year run, right? So it's just basically 5 years of footage that they just managed to whittle down to about 95 minutes, right? I
Right.
just see like just the because it's not just people being chased out, blah blah blah, right? It's also efforts being made to rebuild the community, right? You see, well, in one case, it's a school that's rebuilt and whatnot. I already told you what happened there. It's trying to just maintain sanity, right? And there's a moment where you see where this mother who eventually her family is chased and she's forced to live in a cave, right? Yeah, you see how she's coping with things as well, right? And you know. It's sad to watch, but it's kind of hopeful at the same time, right? How optimistic they try to be, right? And even the kids themselves, because I mean, they're not like blind to what's going on, right? But they just try to go about their life day by day, right? They try to appreciate the fact that they are alive and they could, breathe and whatnot, right? But yeah, ever so often, well, I should say more like on a weekly basis. Yeah, they had to look out for these soldiers who were just coming in the jeeps and they'll just be like, yo, warrants and we had to chase you out and blah blah
Right.
blah. And it's all that stuff though. It's just them trying to keep their head above water with all this, right? Yeah, while all this madness is going on, Dre. It's I don't want to say inspirational though, but it's just really something that I'd say it, Dre. Like just when you think you have it rough too, right? And yeah, there's numerous
Yeah,
times
yeah,
in
yeah.
my life where I feel like, boy, like all this roughness in my life, Dre, how I could get over this, right? But then watching this film, though, it just kind of make you more appreciative of life, Dre. Just seeing that, this is what they're going through, right? But that being said, though, just like 20 Days in Mariupol, this is rough material, right? It's not graphic, just like that
Right.
film, right? Actually, in comparison, it's less violent than 20 Days in Mariupol, right? Yes, there was violence going on, right? But it's not like you saw, mutilations or a lot of people getting shot, right? Even though, yes, there were killings in that film, right? But it wasn't like, that bad, right? It's just seeing these people being forced out of their homes for no reason, right? It's really rough to watch, right? But in a strange way, this is the issue that I know people will have with this, and the same thing with 20 Days in Mariupol and other films of this nature, right? People don't want to see these things, right? It's not
Right.
that they don't want to be aware of it, right? It's just these things are rough to watch, and yes, I would admit it was a tough watch for me, right? But I felt like it was essential. I feel like I needed to see this. I needed to sit through it to the very end, right? And I'm not saying like it's a overly disturbing film and it will give you nightmares. No, just like 20 Days in Mariupol, it's not a show that you'll walk out, you'll get nightmares, right? But it's a show that really shines a light on a real situation that's going on that I didn't even know. I didn't know it was like that. I didn't know it was that severe, right? But at the very end, slight spoiler, they tie it back to what's going on right now, right? With the war that's going on, right? And yeah, it was another gut punch. They just ended on another gut punch where it's like, even when these people trying to make their way through this way, that this war happened, and it almost feels like this retaliation, like Palestine to strike back at Israel for all the shit that they put through, right?
Correct.
But because of how muddled things are, it's just like, well, no, it's even if the people who started it in quotes, right, had reason to do it. I mean, it don't even matter at the end of the day because look at all the people who died, right? Whether
Right.
it's from Israel or Palestine, it don't even matter, right? But you could say, oh, look at what you did back then, and look how you're chasing me out, right? So that's what makes the end of that film just so impactful, right? Where, yeah, it's just these two guys and their family members and their loved ones just trying to survive, trying to live, right? It don't even matter about who start what, right? But the people with the guns now go say, no, you did this, right? And that's the sad part. That's the irony of it all, right? They could say, oh, but you did this first, and look at all they did, right? It do matter is the people who's suffering. That's what matters, right? And they're the ones who being ignored, right? So, like 20 Days and like Navalny before this, because it's a hot button topic, way, yeah, I think that this will win in this year's
Right.
Oscars, right? And again, it's just those like shining moments, like we in the Academy are aware of this, but I think it is effective. I think that when films of this nature win, yes, people will be more aware of that, right? And you will try to find ways to help out, right? Whether it's donating or just learning more, trying to do more, whatever it is, right? But at the same time, because of the material, I know people will kind of shy away from it, and they'll say, "No, I just don't want to see this. I don't need this in my life right now," right? So even though I strongly recommend this, and I will give this a high, I will give this a 4.5 out of 5, just a strong 4.5 out of 5, right? I really don't see myself watch this again in a hurry,
Right.
right? I would recommend it. I would say watch it at least once. I think it's one of those shows that you just had to watch once, you get the point, and you move on, right? But it's just how effective it is in telling this story, what it's about, right? But that's to wrap things up, right? Even though these films, touch on really serious topics, right? I know these aren't the type of films that are easy to recommend. So I know that the moment somebody hears the premise of this, or the moment it wins, there'll be a lot of people who just be like, nah, I just don't want to see this. I don't want to see people being chased out of their homes. I don't want to see this. This is triggering to me. I don't want to see that, right? But I still think that for you to really understand a situation, I think I said this before with Mariupol, right? you had to see it for yourself. It's not just
Right.
seeing a news report on some random station. It's and this is what the film does so well, right? So brilliantly. It puts you there. It puts you in the middle of it. You're seeing this literally live. And you are there with these two guys. And you are there, and literally there's moments where they're running with the camera, running away or running towards something. There's moments where they get one character gets knocked down or they get arrested, and it's a lot that goes on, right? But it's one of those shows where it just says, look, for you to really understand how we feel, you ought to be there with us. Yeah, Ricardo, I don't know if you will check it out one day,
Yeah, no,
but I
more
really
likely.
think you should. I
More
really
likely
think you
I'll find
should.
it. Yeah, more than likely. Again, it's one of those, I am aware of this, so you're not teaching me enough new, but from their given perspective, and that's the nature of documentaries, is showing you from a unique perspective. All right, cool. I'll give this a shot.
Yeah,